On today's show, the Houston Rockets with a heartbreaking overtime loss in San Antonio against the Spurs, 126-122. A really stellar set of performances from Alperen Sengun, Fred VanVleet, and Dillon Brooks. Jalen Green with a decent bounce-back game after his Game 1 struggles. And then, unfortunately, Jabari Smith Jr. Really struggling down the stretch of this game. We're going to break it all down for you coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
Throw it up to Jalen Green.
Sengun here in the short row. Oh, my, that's the no-look.
Jabari for three and the win. Yeah!
Look at Tari, Eason.
Here comes Tari. No!
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
The Houston Rockets select Thompson and Cam Whitmore.
One thing I have never done is not made the playoffs, and so we want to take that step here as well.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin. The show, of course, at Locked On Rockets, free and available wherever you listen to your podcasts, including YouTube. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Dave. Download Dave today at dave.com/LockedOnNBA. You can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on the way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for being an everydayer. Thank you for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day. This game hurt. And it hurt so much because the Rockets should have won this game. They were in control for large portions of this game. And the Spurs did what they do sometimes. They hung around. And they were right there within striking distance at the end of regulation. They were able to tie things up and force it to overtime. And by the time they got to overtime, the Rockets started making mistake after mistake after mistake and let this game slip away. Now, I will say right here from the jump, because it was a dominant performance from Alperen Sengun. It was a decent bounce back game for Jalen Green, although still some concerns there. Really strong performances from Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks. And we got to talk about Jabari Smith Jr. But just going over kind of the end of this game, I do want to address the officiating in this game sucked. And if you listen to this podcast with any regularity over the last few years of me taking it over, you'll know that I'm usually the first person to say, don't blame I hate blaming officiating. I really do. I hate it. I think it's a cheap cop-out. My usual stance is you need to be doing everything you can as an individual, as a team, as a 5-man unit on the floor, whatever. You need to be executing everything and controlling everything within your power before you then look at the officials to say, hey, what gives? We're getting hosed here. And the Rockets did not do that. They didn't. Despite the poor officiating, the Rockets still had so many chances to win this game, to put this one away. And they choked away a lot of them. And very specifically, Jabari had chances down the stretch of this game to put this one away. And it really hurt because, and it wasn't even just Jabari, even Ime Udoka. I think one of the significant turning point in this game was when Jabari Smith Jr. drove in on Wemby and did try to do the Statue of Liberty dunk. Score was 107-104. And Wemby blocked it. At every replay angle that I've seen, it looked like a clean block. Wemby got the ball, and then Jabari recovered the ball and then went back up, and Wemby blocked it a second time. And Ime was incensed. Ime was on the sideline. He thought there should have been a foul. The block looked clean, and Ime was so fired up that he received a technical foul. He gift-wrapped the San Antonio Spurs an extra point in a 3-point game. Keldon Johnson goes and hits the technical free throw. Then he goes 1 for 2 at the line because he received a shooting foul on the possession while Ime was busy yelling at the refs. And this is all with about 2 minutes left to go in the game. So it pulls the Spurs within 1 point, 107-106. Alp comes down, makes a tough layup. They come back down on the other end. Wemby gets a shooting foul, hits his 2 free throws. Still a 1-point game. Rockets come back down. Alperen Sengun gets, an offensive rebound and passes it to, he has it's a ridiculous, little pass to Dillon Brooks under the basket, and Dillon Brooks goes up for 2. Alperen Sengun was in his facilitating bag in this game. So we got 111-108. And then they come down, and Alp gets whistled for this stupid bumping touch foul on Zach Collins with 35 seconds left in the game. Again, San Antonio being gift wrapped a pair of free throws. Zach Collins only goes 1 for 2 at the line though. So we've got 111-109. Rockets come down. Jabari Smith Jr. gets fouled, goes to the free throw line, has a chance to hit 2 free throws to put the Rockets ahead by 4, misses both of them. And that was painful. Even just one of those free throws gives the Rockets a 3-point buffer zone to where the Spurs would need a 3-pointer to tie it up. And then not only, and to compound issues to make it worse, Wemby gets the rebound, goes coast to coast. Rockets, no answer, can't stop him. So Wemby ties the game up at 111. And then the Rockets have a timeout, and they draw up a pretty decent play. They get Jabari Smith Jr. with a wide open look for a 3-pointer, and he misses it. And then that sends the game to overtime. And in overtime, the Rockets started, they started to unravel completely. They had 3 or 4 straight turnovers in overtime. 4 straight turnovers in overtime. 3 of them belonging to Alperen Sengun, 1 of them belonging to Dillon Brooks. And even despite the rough play at the beginning of the overtime period, they were still kind of in this game up until the end. They fought, they tried, but they had so many chances to put this game away. They had so many chances to take control and stay in control of this game. They were up by 9 at one point going into, with 2 minutes to go until halftime, and then they choked away that 9-point lead and allowed the Spurs to tie it up going into the halftime period. So there were moments where the Rockets, their largest lead was 10 points in this game. There were moments where they took control of this game and they jumped out in front and they looked like the better team. And then they would have these slip-ups, these defensive lapses, these mistakes, whether it was giving up wide open threes or, again, the foul calls were pretty questionable at times, with Devin Vassell getting to the free throw line, 11 times in this game, and Victor Wembanyama getting there 8 times. Jalen Green drove, I don't know how many times in this game, to the basket, straight into the teeth of the Spurs defense, didn't attempt a single free throw in this game. I'm not usually a fan of the whole, this is home cooking or there's a narrative, but look, the Wemby narrative, I think, was in full effect in this game. And again, I hate blaming officials, and the Rockets still had so many chances to win this game despite the what it felt like some pretty lopsided officiating. And so this loss is on them. I don't care about the officials. They should have won this game despite the frustrations from the Zebras in this one. And they didn't. They didn't execute down the stretch, and Jabari Smith Jr. Wasn't able to show up at the end of this game, unfortunately. Coming up, I want to get into some of the individual performances, though, from this game, some of the positives that can be taken away from this one. We actually got a team that looked much improved, a team that was actually competitive compared to opening night against the Orlando Magic, and there were a lot of actual areas that can be built upon in this loss. Even though it was a heartbreaking loss, there's a lot of positives that can be drawn from this game. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Dave. At one time or another, we all need just a little financial help, right? That's why Dave is great. Dave can get you cash when you need a hand between paychecks and can help you build credit by settling extra cash advances on time. Dave is the banking app that's leveling the financial playing field. When you download Dave, you can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less, no credit check, and no late fees. It's part of Dave's extra cash account. Advance the money you need with no interest and then settle up later on. You can even build credit when you settle up on time. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to make their finances easier. So if you're in a pinch, get the help you need by downloading Dave. Download Dave today at dave.com/lockedonnba. That's dave.com/lockedonnba. You can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less, no credit check, and no late fees. Download Dave app now or go to dave.com/lockedonnba for terms and conditions. Go to dave.com/legal. Eligibility criteria and instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve, member FDIC. Today's episode is also brought to you by Jace Medical, because look, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world today, whether it's wildfires across the U.S., could be hurricanes, earthquakes, so many different natural disasters. And so many of these can lead to supply chain shortages for medications or the inability to get medications in a timely manner. Look, I know how important this is to me because as a type 1 diabetic that relies on insulin, as an asthmatic, if I can't get access to my medications, there could be potentially life-threatening consequences. The Jace case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. You can also now customize your case and add additional life-saving medications based on your unique needs. Jace Medical offers customizability for your Jace case with dozens of add-on medications. Choose the medications that best fit you and your family's unique needs. Here's an option too. They have gift cards. So you can buy a gift card for a family member or a loved one so that they can get a Jace case of their own. So go to jacemedical.com and enter code LOCKEDON at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That's promo code LOCKEDON at Jace Medical, Jase medical.com. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, want to get into some of the there was actually an overwhelming amount of positive from this game. It feels weird to talk about like a moral victory in a loss against the San Antonio Spurs. But at the same time, how can you not be really impressed with how well so many of the guys played on this roster, namely the kind of trio that is cementing themselves as the foundation for what feels like this Rockets team this season: Fred VanVleet, Dillon Brooks, and Alperen Sengun. Al P was ridiculous in this game. 25 points on 11 of 18 shooting. He had a three-pointer, 14 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. Did have 6 turnovers, including the 3 there in the overtime period, and was only 2 of 6 from the free throw line. Free throw shooting was a major issue in this game for the Houston Rockets, unfortunately. Look, in a game that you lost by 4 points, 126-122, in a game that was tied up and went to overtime, the Rockets were 10 of 20 from the free throw line. They shot 50%. That's unacceptable, right? You shoot 75% or better, you shoot 70%, and suddenly you're talking about a close win instead of a close loss. So free throw shooting is one of the fundamental aspects. You got to be able to shoot free throws, and the Spurs did that. The Spurs shot their free throws. They were also given quite a few more free throws than the Rockets. They were 21 of 28, so plus 11 at the free throw line. They shot 75% from the charity stripe. So free throw shooting was an issue kind of across the board for this Rockets team, but Alp had a dominant, impressive game. Fred VanVleet was sensational. 24 points on 10 of 20 shooting. He was 2 of 10 from the three-point line, which is a bit uncharacteristic from Fred. He was really gunning it from there. There were a couple ones that were, maybe a little contested, maybe a little overly aggressive, but for the most part, didn't take really any issue with his shot selection in this game. He had 8 boards, 12 dimes, and only 3 turnovers. Fred was absolutely in his bag in this game, played a team-high 45 minutes in this game. So of an available 53 minutes, Ime Udoka really leaning on his veteran point guard in Fred VanVleet to try and carry them home in this one. And then Dillon Brooks, 17 points on 7 of 13 shooting, 7-1-3 field goal percentage. Was 1 of 2 from the three-point line, 2 of 2 at the charity stripe. He had 2 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal. But some of the defense that Dillon was playing, man, when I tell you that having the Rockets have a defensive ace like Dillon Brooks who can clamp up guys left, right, and center is such a valuable commodity to have. There were moments where he was, pressed up on Devin Vassell or even made life difficult for Wemby at times. Wemby had a strong game, but he also was really inefficient from the field, just 7 of 19 shooting. He had 4 turnovers. Like there were a lot of moments where the Rockets defense made life hell for Victor Wembanyama, and Dillon Brooks was definitely a part of that. But the guy that I really want to focus on here of the trio is Alperen Sengun, because I think you're starting to see a real good chemistry develop between Al P and Fred VanVleet. Fred starting to understand where LP likes the ball, understanding how to, the certain angles that he needs to get to in the pick and roll to deliver the ball to LP. We saw them connect on a number of different pick and roll sets in this game. We also saw them work well together with some dribble handoff actions. And I mean, again, after the game, Fred said Alp was a beast. And there's no other way to describe this performance from Sengun. He was dominant, and he was great on both ends of the basketball. He's your Locked On Rockets player of the game from this one. I didn't anoint a Locked On Rockets player of the game from game one because it was really kind of a disappointing performance all around. Didn't feel right to give somebody a player of the game from that one. So Alp gets your first official Locked On Rockets player of the game this season because he was the straw that was stirring the drink for the Rockets offense. The Rockets offense was built around, or is at least right now, looks its best when it's running through Fred VanVleet and Alperen Sengun in that two-man game. And then also shout out to the Rockets coaching staff and Ime Udoka and the fact that they identified, hey, the Spurs have no answer for Alp. Let's keep dumping it into the post. And it worked. Like, it actually looked really, really good for about 85% of this game, 90% of this game. And unfortunately, they get to overtime. They keep going back to Alp down low in the post, and the Spurs basically had it sniffed out. Like they figured out how to double and what passing lanes to occupy. And I do think at that point, Alp may have been a little gassed because the Rockets had been riding him pretty hard. Pause at that point. So, you know, the decision-making wasn't as crisp. There were some sloppy turnovers, some unforced errors in the overtime stretch of this game. But, I mean, he was in his bag. At one point, he pulled the Smitty driving to the basket to fake out, I believe it was Zach Collins. He postered the living hell out of Zach Collins in this game. I'm talking every angle, every different look at that dunk was ridiculous. He goes on Twitter after the fact and he posts the screenshot or the picture of him dunking on Zach Collins that said "Kung Fu in the air," which is just a ridiculous caption to have on a poster type dunk. He played great defense on Victor Wembanyama when he was guarding him. He had one point where he poke checked the ball away from Wemby on the perimeter. He did a good job of having a body on him and really, making things uncomfortable for Wemby, boxing him out at times. It was kind of a stark contrast to how it looked when Jabari was guarding Wemby, unfortunately, in this game, because Wemby is not exactly a big, strong dude, but even Wemby was bodying Jabari at certain points in this game, which just, it can't happen. You can't let a rookie come in and body you that way. So Alp, I thought, was really fantastic in this game, showed out on both ends, and you're starting to see that chemistry develop between him and Fred VanVleet, and that's going to be so important for this Rockets team moving forward, for those two specifically to have a chemistry and to see this team identify and realize, hey, if we just keep giving the ball to Alp, we can make good things happen, right? Give the ball to him in the post, and he's either going to score at the basket, draw free throws, or he's going to be able to kick it out, and then you get the ball moving, and you can get some wide open shots that way. That's high-level offense. It's so simple. He's the one guy on this team that routinely draws a double team, and it only took 2 games for us to see the coaching staff immediately go to it, and go to it in crunch time is the main thing. Like, they didn't just go to it for a 5-minute stretch in the game and say, all right, we gave you your touches, let's go back to, playing heavy perimeter-oriented basketball with Jalen and Fred. No, they kept going back to it. That was their go-to bread and butter in this game. And the Spurs really didn't have an answer for Alp until the overtime period, where, again, the passing lanes, they finally sniffed it out. And I do think there was a level of kind of fatigue playing a factor there, maybe with the entire team, not just Alp, but there was, some heavy minutes across the board. Again, VanVleet played a team high 45, Alp with 41 minutes, Dillon Brooks with 39 minutes, Jabari at 37, Jalen at 38. This was a really intense game where I do think, come the overtime period, the Rockets were probably a little gassed, unfortunately. Not an excuse, but it's probably a contributing factor to some of the mental fatigue, the mistakes that were being made there in the overtime period. Coming up, I do still want to highlight some of the other standout points from this game. Need to give Dillon Brooks and Fred VanVleet some additional flowers. Jalen Green with a bounce-back performance after his Game 1 struggles. And we also got to continue to talk about Jabari Smith Jr., what needs to change for him moving forward. And hey, Amen Thompson shaking off that rookie rust off the Houston Rockets bench. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. PrizePicks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you versus the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 players' stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is so easy to play. You can make quick selections. It takes less than 60 seconds and you can make your picks. They've got quick withdrawals and easy gameplay and an enormous selection of players and stat types, which is what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. They even offer weekly promotions that can lead to huge payouts like Taco Tuesday, where each Tuesday PrizePicks discounts select projections up to 25% to provide even more value. So if you've been thinking about getting into DFS, you've got to check out PrizePicks. Go check them out. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA or use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports made easy. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, I know I spoke about Fred and Dillon a little bit already, but I just want to make sure to emphasize how important they've been and that you can really see the impact that they have when they're on the floor. The level of calm that Fred provides when he has the basketball, the ability to identify who needs the ball and where, and you know, I cannot count the number of times last season where Alp would get the ball in the post, a double team would come and he would kick the ball back out, and then the double team would immediately go away and he wouldn't get the ball back, right? So seeing those kind of quick re-entry passes to the post from Fred VanVleet to Alperen Sengun, understanding, you know, how to set him up, how to run the offense through him is a really refreshing thing to see. And again, Dillon Brooks, his defensive impact, and just some of the smart plays that Dillon Brooks makes. Like it really kind of feels like he got the bag, like he secured his payday, and now he's just out there playing high level basketball. Like there really weren't many, if any, moments at all in this game where I thought, like that's a stereotypical Dillon Brooks moment where you're just like, what are you doing with the basketball? No, he just played high level, good basketball. He was unselfish, making the extra pass at times, really finishing tough in traffic. I mean, the number of times that Dillon he's not like a fancy driver. Like he doesn't have like a bag where he's like, you know, slicing and dicing through the defense and he's going to get to like some insane reverse layup. He's just big and strong and he just like puts his shoulder down like a running back or a fullback and just goes through the defense and then bodies up and then lays the ball up off the glass, and it works. So seeing Dillon and Fred kind of do their thing was really exciting in this game. Even Fred at one point busting out a little bit of a Steve Nash-esque move where he drove it in and kind of probed the paint and then nobody picked him up, so he just turned around and hit like a little, 8-10 footer just outside of the paint. It was very Steve Nash-esque. And honestly, it's just a lot of fun to watch Fred and Dillon play basketball. Like they're just exciting players to watch. So that's, even in a loss, this was a exciting game going back and forth. And as much as I hate to admit it, Wemby is an exciting basketball player to watch. Like the sequence where Alperen Sengun had the Smitty and then the bucket, Wemby came back down, or the Smitty and then the dunk, I should say. And then Wemby came back down on the other end and they lobbed up a pass to the rim and Wemby got the reverse alley-oop slam. It was basically like, anything you can do, I can do better. And I was just like my jaw almost dropped watching it, because like I was watching Sengun, I was like, oh my God. And then I saw Wemby and I was like, oh my God. It was kind of a ridiculous game. But I don't want to give Wemby too much praise. It's, as a basketball fan, it's pretty insane to watch though. Jalen Green, strong bounce back performance in this game. 22 points on 10 of 20 shooting, 2 of 6 from 3-point land, had 5 boards, 4 assists, and only 2 turnovers in his 38 minutes. I liked the performance from Jalen, but and this still continues to be an issue for Jalen, unfortunately. Look, he went off in the first quarter. He had 10 first quarter points, but then he only scored 12 the rest of the way. And it felt like, especially at the end of the game, he was a bit of a non-factor. And I don't know if that was just because, like, if he was just content to take a back seat or what. Again, I know Fred had it going. They were running it through Sengun. But there's a level of like I feel like there were moments in this game where the Rockets needed some scoring, where they needed buckets, and Jalen probably could have still been a little bit more aggressive. I don't know if it feels nitpicky or what, but it's such an his scoring just feels inconsistent at times, right? Where it's like, okay, he can go off for 10 points in a quarter, but then he'll go scoreless the next quarter, or only one bucket for the next quarter and a half or whatever, before he then heats back up and starts hitting some shots. So I'd like to see him be able to level out a little bit to where the scoring is consistent across all 4 quarters, or across his playing time on the court, and not just, he's going to explode in one quarter and then disappear the rest of the game. Because that's kind of what happened in this one, where it really didn't feel like he was even out there at the end of the game, unfortunately. Now, some of that might just be a side effect of taking what the defense gives you. They were running through Alperen Sengun a lot. Jabari Smith Jr. was the guy that was getting, a lot of open looks within the confines of what the Spurs were allowing defensively. So that's just kind of, the way the cookie crumbles, I guess. But I would like to see Jalen be a bit more of an impact player, at least as far as scoring is concerned, over the entirety of the game, rather than just, going off in one quarter and then kind of not coasting the rest of the way, but settling into the background a little bit. Amen Thompson had a solid bounce back from his rookie struggles in game 1. Not a phenomenal game for Amen, but 4 points, 2 of 4 shooting. He had a rebound. He had a few assists, only 1 turnover. It was only 13 minutes. It was a very short little stint, but he looked much more in control out there. He looked like he had some confidence, that he knew kind of what he was doing. Even when the Spurs were kind of pressing him at times, he looked more sure of himself with the basketball. It very much looked like he shook off kind of the rookie jitters from that first game against the Orlando Magic. And look, long-term, I'm not worried about him, man. He's a rookie. He's going to have ups and downs. The first game against the Magic was probably, a bit of a deer in headlights moments for him, but seeing him be able to have just even these little minimal contributions in this game was a welcome sight. And it's a nice thing for him to be able to build upon moving forward. Jeff Green off the Rockets bench was really important in this game. 10 points, 4 of 4 shooting, was 2 of 2 at the free throw line, had a rebound, had an assist, provided some switchability on the defensive side of the ball, playing some 4 at times, playing some 5 at times. A little bit of everything from Uncle Jeff in this one, who was the high minutes man off the bench for the Rockets with 21 minutes played. And it was actually really funny. At one point, Ime Udoka went with like the all-vet lineup, where he was just like, you know what? I'm going to run the veteran brigade. He had Fred, Reggie, Dillon, Jeff, and Boban all out there at once. Even Boban getting some minutes in this game with Jock Landale in concussion protocol, unfortunately. So needing a little bit of size out there to counteract some of the size that the Spurs were able to throw on the floor. And it worked, actually. The minutes where Boban was out there, he was a +3 in his minutes on the floor. And, he had a couple buckets. It was an interesting little, kind of lineup, and I don't expect that we'll see it often this season, but it was just funny to see Ime kind of go, you know what, I'm going to rely on the vets for a little while and kind of see what happens. And I know I know I spent a little bit of time talking about him earlier, but I want to make sure to address Jabari Smith Jr. again here, in the show before we wrap things up. Look, Jabari struggled, and Jabari's struggled now through 2 games. Looks very different than he did in preseason. In this game, he had 13 points on 5 of 16 shooting, was 2 of 8 from three-point land, 1 of 4 at the free throw line, including the 2 go-ahead free throws to potentially, close this one out to ice the game. He did have 9 rebounds, 4 of which were on the offensive glass. He had a steal, only a couple turnovers. It really felt like he was trying to find ways to make an impact in this game, especially, some of the offensive rebounds where he got, there was a point in this game where he had missed a lot of early shots, really looked disjointed, and then he kind of he woke up at one point. Like he was in the paint and he got an offensive rebound, and he really he took a power dribble and he went up and dunked it, and it felt like he kind of woke up. I remember saying on Twitter, on X, whatever, that Jabari started kind of showing signs of life in that moment. It kind of felt like he was starting to wake up. I think he hit a 3 a couple moments later, and unfortunately, he wasn't able to deliver, in the closing moments of this game. He struggled down the stretch, missed the free throws, missed the 3, missed his first shot in overtime. He had a moment where, Wemby got him on one end, and then he tried to show Wemby up on the other end by hitting a 3 and missed it. I don't know if I've ever seen a player take a loss as hard as I think Jabari Smith Jr. took this loss. Post game, he went out there and he was talking to us post game, and he seemed so down, so dejected. I asked him, I was just like, what's going through your mind right now? And he said that he thinks everybody did their part, but that he didn't show up and do his part, and that's just kind of how he is, and that he's just trying to move on. And you could tell that this loss was weighing on him. Like in the locker room when we first walked in and we're waiting for the players to wrap up their showers, get dressed, whatever, to come over and do their interviews, because we just kind of stand off on the side. Jabari was just sitting there, man. Wasn't looking at his phone, wasn't talking to anybody. He was just sitting there like with this 1,000-yard stare. And the one thing you can't question about Jabari, the one thing that you've never been able to question, his work ethic is one of the best in the game. He puts in the immense amount of work that is necessary to try and be great. And I hope that he can use this as motivation going forward. It's been a rough start to his season, but he knows what he's capable of, and the team knows what he's capable of. And shout out to Alperen Sengun, who not only was the best player on the floor for the Houston Rockets in this game, but he also is embracing a leadership role with this Rockets team. There was a moment in the game near the end of regulation where Alp walked over to Jabari and was like patting him on the chest, trying to hype him up, like telling him, you got this. And so I asked Alperen Sengun what that moment was with Jabari at the end of the game. And he said he was head down, and I was saying, heads up, game's going to come. We still have 80 games. He said, I was just trying to give him motivation. I told him we need you right now. So for Alperen Sengun to go from speaking not a lick of English 2 years ago to being a leader on the floor for this Rockets team, not only the best player, the most talented player on the floor in this game for Houston, but to also trying to bring up and elevate and lift up his teammates in, when the going gets tough, when they're struggling, that's a leader. That's somebody that you look at as a cornerstone talent. That's somebody that you want to build around and you want to be a focal point of your team moving forward. And it feels like the Rockets, through just 2 games already, have kind of identified that Alp can be that guy to lift everybody else up. And hopefully it's something that they continue to build upon moving forward, because it wasn't quite exactly shin hub. It was just a lot of Alp post-ups, but maybe it's the precursor for things to come down the line. So with that, that's going to do it for today's episode. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, check us out on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe. Give me your thoughts on Jabari Smith Jr.'s performance and his post-game comments. Give me your thoughts on the Alperen Sengun masterclass, the insane poster on Zach Collins, finally getting revenge for the poster that was waved off last season. Seriously, there's like a grudge match between Alp and Zach Collins. But let me know all your thoughts in the YouTube comments. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.